But first to a story that's going to be front page news tomorrow of the Daily Telegraph. And I'm going to bring you that front page in just a few minutes when it's ready to go. It's about the man who was sensationally billed by 60 Minutes as a Chinese spy, breaking ranks to defect to the West. Wang Liqiang claimed, in a world exclusive, to have controlled and ordered high-level operations, including a kidnapping, and ran a social media effort to meddle in the Taiwanese elections.
We established a cyber army. If we wanted to attack someone, we could instantly take down their Facebook. I was responsible for organizing the cyber army attacks. Taiwan was the most important work of ours. The infiltration into media, temples, and grassroots organizations.
But I can tonight reveal that Wang's claims of being a major player in the espionage space are believed to be highly dubious. And this will be the focus of the Daily Telegraph's front page tomorrow. Was Wang a Chinese spy at all? Well, Australia's security and intelligence agencies gave advice to the Morrison government's National Security Committee of Cabinet on the matter on Tuesday in Canberra. The advice given by security agencies was that Wang is not believed to be a Chinese spy at the level where there would be any interest in him from Australia's point of view. While he might have done some very low-level work, and I repeat, very low-level work, Wang did not operate in Australia, and he would not add value to our country, according to this assessment. Among the reasons that created doubt around Wang's claims to be a Chinese spy or a high-level one were his young age, which raised alarm bells, the absence of detail in the information that he provided, and the fact that most, if not all of it, was already in the public domain. It's understood that it's more likely he was using the guise of a spy as a construct to get asylum or residency in Australia. It's a big stretch, a big cover to try and get residency in Australia. Now, Wang is represented by former Labor candidate George Newhouse, and he's a left-leaning human rights lawyer who's well-versed in handling the claims of asylum seekers from Manus and Nauru. And you might remember him back from when he ran against Malcolm Turnbull in the Wentworth federal election. So how was it that Wang came to such prominence where he occupied the attention of the National Security Committee of Cabinet? Well, Liberal backbencher Andrew Hastie, who's a well-known China critic, so much so that he's been barred from entering the country, outrageously so, he was put in contact with Wang on October 8. He then referred him to ASIO that same day, according to the Australian newspaper's report. The Australian also revealed that before the story on 60 Minutes aired, Hastie again contacted security agencies to check that Mr. Wang's claims were being investigated. Hastie, as I said, he's an outspoken critic of China's dictatorship. He told 60 Minutes that Wang was a friend of democracy and said the government should give him protection.
I'm of the view that anyone who's willing to assist us in defending our sovereignty deserves our protection.
In saying that, Hastie chose to preempt ASIO's investigation, and this was before ASIO and our other intelligence agencies gave their advice to the National Security Committee of Cabinet on Tuesday this week. As the chair of the Joint Parliamentary Committee on Intelligence and Security, Hastie does have access to classified intelligence, but he's not privy to the full picture that goes to the National Security Committee of Cabinet. Despite the advice that Wang is not of interest to Australia, the Australian government and Scott Morrison may have little choice but to grant him a protection visa, because sending him home or sending him back to China would surely, most definitely now put his life at risk. This decision will inevitably put strain on China and Australia's relationship, like it did when Chen Yonglin defected to Australia in 2005. And all of this diplomatic trouble for a man who, according to our agencies, has little new information to offer Australia at all. Now to a very terrific, lively panel, I am sure. Chris Merritt, Legal Affairs Editor at The Australian, and Darren Barnett, former Labor Advisor. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
And in Melbourne, Evan Mulholland. How are you going, Evan?
Very well, thank you.
From the IPA. Thanks for joining me. Now, let's start with the big story that I've brought tonight on this show that's going to be front page of the Daily Telegraph tomorrow, and I can now show you that front page. Have a look at it on the screen. It is coming up now. China spy farce. So this is the story that's front page of the Saturday Telegraph tomorrow, and it reveals that our intelligence and security agencies briefed the Morrison government's National Security Committee of Cabinet on Tuesday this week that their best advice is that this man, Mr. Wang, at the centre of the 60 Minutes claim, is not a high-level spy at all. They believe he was a very low-level operative if he was a spy at all. He did not operate in Australia, and he has no value, no real value that he could offer to Australian intelligence agencies, and is not of any interest to us. That was the information given to the Morrison government's National Security Committee of Cabinet on Tuesday in Canberra. While obviously I'm not privy to ASIO's full advice, unfortunately, my understanding is that there were concerns and doubts raised owing to his age, very young, which raised alarm bells. Also the fact that he had no detail around the information he was providing, and the fact that most, if not all of it, was in the public domain. Now, Chris Merritt, let me start with you on this. Oh, and the other part of the story, of course, is that it is believed that he was doing this to get residency and asylum in Australia, which he will probably end up getting now, Chris, because the government, in all good conscience, can't send him back to China or anywhere that has an extradition treaty with China, knowing that his life would be in danger.
It's very, you could view this as a very cynical move. It does explain, if you like, why Andrew Hastie was so cautious about the way he handled this, referred it straight off to the authorities, straight off to ASIO. It would have been tempting for someone a little less experienced to make a bit of hay out of this. Had he done so, he would have been in a terrible pickle right now. But the alarm bells went off, and that's a good thing.
Well, he did, you know, Darren, Andrew Hastie didn't wait for the outcome of ASIO's investigation, however, before he went on 60 Minutes. And, you know, he did make a hay of it, to use Chris Merritt's language, because, you know, he only referred the matter to ASIO on October 8. That interview with 60 Minutes aired last Sunday night, so it was barely a month and a half. It's barely giving ASIO a chance to do their job before he went on air, and I've already played that grab tonight where Andrew Hastie said that he thinks the government should give this guy protection.
I think in many ways the government's probably almost obliged to give protection now, given the considerable coverage the case has had. If you were in Andrew Hastie's position, you probably would have done a similar thing to what he did. That you would have referred it to ASIO and other authorities to have them check it out.
Their investigation?
But if the 60 Minutes story is going to be on anyway, then you're probably going to try and tick your boxes as an MP and someone who's the head of a significant committee in a joint committee in the Parliament. So I think it's difficult if you're in the position where it's going to be public anyway. You probably want to try to do the right thing. But it's obviously concerning if someone's using what's essentially a vexatious claim to become an Australian citizen, but we do have a sense of obligation to look after people and their humanitarian concerns.
Evan, how could this impact on Australia's relationship with China? You know, when there was a big defection of a diplomat back in 2005 that caused a rift, do you expect that this case will do so as well?
I think it will certainly cause a rift. You'll often see from the embassies and the foreign agencies very strong language and alike, especially in their national media and their academia. But yeah, Andrew Hastie's done the right thing here, and good on Andrew Hastie and people like James Patterson as well for standing up for Australian values in the face of an increasingly authoritarian regime that has a deeper and deeper interest in Australia and its political activities. Let's not forget, under Malcolm Turnbull and Julie Bishop, we very nearly had an extradition treaty with China, and were not for James Patterson, Andrew Hastie, Corey Bernardi and Tim Wilson and alike causing a revolt, we certainly could have had one. So I think that there will be some bad tension between China and Australia, but ultimately it's up to the government to work through those relationships.
Yeah, well, in my view, a Liberal backbencher deciding not to wait for an ASIO security agency's investigation, preempting it by speaking publicly on national television and saying someone deserves protection when this incident is going to cause, as Evan just said, a rift in Australia's relationship with China is highly problematic for the government. But